The first thing my sister did when she saw me step onto the sand was laugh. Not the kind of laugh that slips out by accident, not surprise, not joy. It was sharp, public, calculated. "Oh my God," she said loudly, pulling her sunglasses down just enough to look me over. "You're actually wearing that?" I froze for half a second. Not because I didn't expect it, but because some small, foolish part of me had hoped she might surprise me this time. We were at a public beach, one of those wide, sun-bleached stretches where everything feels exposed. Towels laid too close together, children running everywhere, conversations overlapping. No place to disappear. I adjusted my cover-up instinctively, even though I'd already made the decision to wear it open, even though I'd told myself over and over that I was done hiding. "What?" I asked calmly. She gestured vaguely at my arms, my side, my shoulder, areas I knew intimately, areas I'd spent years learning to live inside again. "Those scars," she said, wrinkling her nose. "I mean, wow, you couldn't have picked a less flattering swimsuit if you tried." A couple nearby glanced over. My mother pretended not to hear. My sister's friends went quiet, eyes darting between us, unsure whether to laugh or look away. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Not pain, exactly. More like memory waking up. I took a breath and set my bag down on the towel. "They're just scars," I said. She snorted. "Easy for you to say. You're the one who got used to them." I didn't respond. That apparently irritated her more than anything. She'd always hated when she couldn't get a reaction. For as long as I could remember, my sister was the one people noticed. The loud one, the pretty one, the one who knew how to work a room. I'd been the other one. Quieter, serious, inconveniently private. When we were younger, she used to tell people I was sensitive, like it was a warning label. Now she leaned back on her towel, sipping her drink, voice raised just enough for others to hear. "I just don't get it," she said. "If I looked like that, I'd keep it covered. Some things don't need to be on display." Something in my mother shifted then. She glanced at me, then quickly away. That hurt more than my sister's words. I knelt and began setting up my towel, my movements slow and deliberate. I refused to rush, refused to shrink. The scars weren't small. They traced my skin in uneven lines, pale in some places, darker in others, some jagged, some smooth. Each one a chapter my body remembered even when I tried not to. People stared. They always did. Most tried not to. Some didn't bother. A little boy nearby tugged on his father's arm and whispered something. The father hushed him, glancing at me apologetically. I smiled faintly. Kids were honest. I preferred that. My sister wasn't done. "So, are you going to explain what happened to you, or is that still one of your mysterious don't ask things?" I finally looked at her. "I didn't come here to explain myself," I said evenly. She raised an eyebrow. "Relax, I'm just curious."
"No," I replied. "You're being cruel." A few heads turned. She laughed again, louder this time. "Oh, please, you always make everything so dramatic." Dramatic. That word. It had followed me through hospitals, through physical therapy, through long nights when sleep wouldn't come because my body remembered things my mind tried to forget. I folded my towel carefully and sat down. "I'm going for a swim," I said. She stared at me. "You're actually going in the water?" "Yes." "With everyone watching?" "Yes." She shook her head. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I met her gaze. "Not about the things you think I should." I stood, slipped off my sandals, and walked toward the shoreline. The breeze brushed against my skin, cool and salty. Each step felt deliberate, exposed, real. I could feel eyes on me, judging, curious, some sympathetic, some not. I didn't rush. I let the water reach my ankles, then my calves. Behind me, I heard my sister say something under her breath. I didn't turn around. The ocean was steady, unconcerned. It didn't recoil from my scars. It didn't flinch. I waded in until the water reached my waist, then dove forward, letting it close over me. For a moment, everything was quiet. Underwater, no one stared, no one whispered, no one reduced me to what had happened to my body. When I surfaced, my heart was pounding, not from fear, but from something close to relief. I swam out farther, strong strokes, letting muscle memory take over. My body knew what to do. It always had. When I finally turned back toward shore, I noticed something different. A small group had gathered near our towels. Not my sister's friends. Older men. Military posture. One of them wore a cap pulled low over his eyes. They weren't looking at my sister. They were looking at me. I slowed, treading water. My sister noticed too. She stood up, shading her eyes. "What's this about?" she muttered. I reached the shore and walked up onto the sand, water streaming down my arms, my scars fully visible now in the sunlight. The man in the cap stepped forward. He removed it. His hair was white, his face weathered, his posture unmistakable. He looked at me for a long moment, then he smiled. "I was hoping it was you," he said. My sister frowned. "Do you know her?" The man didn't look at her. He looked only at me. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady and loud enough for those nearby to hear, "you probably don't remember me, but I remember you very well."
My heart skipped. He straightened, then did something that made the entire beach go silent. He saluted, a full, formal salute. "I owe you my life," he said, "and the lives of every sailor under my command." The air felt like it had been sucked out of the world. My sister stared at him, then at me. "What is this?" she demanded, laughter gone. The man turned to her slowly. "You're looking at the woman," he said, "who saved my entire fleet." And just like that, the story my sister thought she was telling about me shattered. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The sound of the ocean kept moving like nothing extraordinary had just happened, waves rolling in and retreating with the same indifference they'd always had. Seagulls cried overhead. A child laughed somewhere down the beach. But around us, everything had stopped. My sister's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted from the man back to me, like she was waiting for someone to laugh and reveal it was all a joke. No one did. "I think you're mistaken," she said finally, forcing a thin smile. "She's my sister." The man didn't even blink. "I'm aware," he replied. My mother stood up slowly, confusion written across her face. "Saved a fleet?" The man nodded once, respectfully. "Yes, ma'am." I wanted to disappear, not because I was ashamed, but because this was the part I never wanted public, the part that always came with questions, stares, assumptions, the part people thought they were entitled to once they knew. "I was in command of the 7th Task Group," he continued, still addressing my sister now, his voice carrying easily over the sand. 6 ships, nearly 800 personnel. My sister laughed weakly. "This is insane." He finally looked at her. "There was an explosion," he said calmly. "Midnight, open water, fire spreading faster than our suppression systems could handle. Comms were down, visibility was near zero. People had begun to gather closer now, drawn in by tone alone. We were dead in the water," he continued, "until your sister volunteered." My sister's laugh died in her throat. "Volunteered for what?" she asked. I closed my eyes briefly. The memories rose anyway. "She went back inside," the man said, Through heat and smoke no one else could navigate. She rerouted a failing system manually, knowing full well she might not make it out. My sister's face went pale. My mother clutched the edge of the chair. I opened my eyes and met the man's gaze. "You don't have to," I began quietly. He shook his head. "Yes, I do." He turned back to the small crowd forming around us. "This woman," he said, gesturing to me, "took actions that night that prevented a chain reaction. Without her, the fire would have reached the fuel stores. We wouldn't be standing here." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. My sister stared at my arms now, at my side, at my shoulder, the same places she'd mocked minutes earlier. "That's not possible," she whispered. I stepped forward.
"Enough," I said. The man stopped immediately, nodding. I turned to my sister. "You don't get to know this part of my life just because it embarrasses you now," I said calmly. "You didn't care when it hurt." Her lips trembled. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked at her steadily. "You never asked," I replied. "You only judged." Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. My mother finally found her voice. "You were injured?" she asked softly. I nodded once. She took a step toward me, hesitated, then reached out as if to touch my arm, and stopped herself. "I didn't want you to worry," I said, "or pity me." The man cleared his throat gently. "I won't intrude further," he said, "but I needed to say thank you, publicly." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn coin. He placed it in my hand. "For courage," he said simply. I closed my fingers around it. "Thank you," I replied. He saluted once more, then turned and walked back toward his group. The crowd slowly dispersed, buzzing with quiet conversation. My sister sat down hard on her towel. She looked small. For the first time in her life, she didn't know how to spend the moment. I sat beside her. She stared straight ahead. "Those scars. They're mine, not a flaw, not a spectacle." "I didn't know," she whispered. "That never stopped you before," I replied gently. She swallowed. "I thought you were just being dramatic." I exhaled slowly. "I almost died." The words settled between us, heavy, final. My mother knelt in front of me. "I'm sorry," she said, voice breaking. "I should have defended you." I looked at her, really looked. "I needed you to," I said, honestly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. The beach no longer felt exposed. It felt quiet, respectful. People glanced at me now, not with curiosity, but something closer to understanding. My sister didn't say anything else for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely audible. "I was cruel." "Yes," I said. She flinched. "But," I continued, "you don't get forgiveness just because you're embarrassed." She nodded slowly. "I know." I stood, brushing sand from my legs.
"I'm going back in the water," I said. She looked up at me. "You don't hate me?" I paused. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I won't let you hurt me again." She nodded, accepting that for what it was. As I walked back toward the ocean, the sun warm on my skin, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because someone had praised me, but because the truth had finally spoken louder than mockery, and my scars, the ones she tried to turn into shame, had become something else entirely. They were proof, and the story wasn't finished yet. I didn't expect the aftermath to follow me home. I should have known better. The beach incident didn't end when we packed up our towels. It didn't dissolve into the sand or wash away with the tide. It clung to us, settled into the car ride, followed us into silence. My sister didn't speak on the way back. Neither did my mother. The only sound was the hum of the road and the faint rattle of the air conditioner. I sat in the back seat, watching the scenery blur past, the weight of the moment pressing down in ways I hadn't anticipated. Exposure does that. Even when the truth is yours, even when it's deserved, letting it out into the open costs something. When we got home, my sister went straight to her room. My mother lingered in the kitchen, pretending to tidy up things that were already clean. "You could have told us," she said finally, not looking at me. I set my bag down. "You never wanted to hear anything that didn't fit your version of me." She turned then, startled. "That's not fair." I met her eyes. "Isn't it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence that followed wasn't defensive, it was reflective. That was new. "I thought you were just distant," she said quietly, "closed off." "I was healing," I replied. That night, I lay awake in my old childhood room staring at the ceiling I'd memorized years ago. Every crack, every shadow felt unchanged. But I wasn't. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister. "I'm sorry about earlier. About everything. I didn't know how bad it was." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "You didn't want to know," I typed. "There's a difference." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I was jealous," she finally wrote. "You always had this quiet strength. People notice it now. I didn't know how to deal with that." I exhaled slowly. Honesty, even belated, still landed. "Mocking me didn't make you stronger," I replied. "It just made me quieter." She didn't respond after that. The next morning, my mother knocked softly on my door. She said, "I made breakfast." At the table, she slid a plate toward me, then hesitated. "Why didn't you come home after it happened?" she asked. I knew what she meant. Because I didn't want to be pitied, and I didn't want to be reduced to what happened to me.
She nodded slowly. "I failed you." The admission startled me. "I should have protected you," she continued. "Instead, I let your sister speak for both of us." I didn't say anything right away. "I'm not asking you to fix the past," I said finally. "I just need you to stop pretending it didn't matter." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I see you now," she said. That afternoon, my sister cornered me in the hallway. "I keep replaying it," she admitted, "the way I laughed." I leaned against the wall. "Why?" "Because everyone was watching," she said, "and for once they weren't watching me." There it was. "I didn't need an audience," I replied. "I needed respect." She swallowed. "I don't know how to make this right." I considered her for a moment. "You don't get to make it right with words," I said. "You make it right by never doing it again." She nodded. "I can do that." "Good," I said, "because I'm done explaining myself." That evening, my phone buzzed again, this time from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Commander Hayes. The Admiral asked me to pass along his contact information. He said you might need it." I stared at the message, then at the scars on my arm. I hadn't thought about that world in a long time. I hadn't wanted to. But the past has a way of resurfacing when you stop hiding. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I went for a walk. The neighborhood was quiet, the sky turning orange and pink as the sun dipped low. Each step felt grounding, like I was reclaiming something that had been taken from me piece by piece over the years. People passed me without staring, without knowing, and for once that felt okay. When I returned home, my sister was sitting on the porch. "I told my friends," she said. I stopped. "Told them what?" "The truth," she replied, "about the scars, about what I said, about why it was wrong." I studied her face for signs of performance. I didn't find any. "They were quiet," she added. "They didn't laugh." "Good," I said. She looked up at me. "I'm proud of you." I almost laughed. Be careful, that's a new role for you. She smiled weakly. I know. That night, I finally replied to the message. Thank him for me, I wrote, but I'm not looking to be remembered. The response came quickly. He said you never were. I slept better than I had in months, because the beach hadn't just exposed my scars, it had exposed something else, the fragile stories people tell themselves to feel superior, and once those stories break, they don't come back together the same way.
The reckoning wasn't over yet, but for the first time, it wasn't mine alone to carry. The days after the beach felt oddly suspended, like the world was waiting to see what version of me would show up next. For most of my life, I'd been predictable to my family, quiet, compliant, the one who absorbed discomfort so others didn't have to feel it. The beach shattered that version of me in front of witnesses, and now no one quite knew how to act around me, including me. My sister tried first. She became careful, too careful. She watched her words, flinched when she laughed too loudly, checked my face after every comment like she was waiting for permission to exist again. It was uncomfortable in a different way, guilt replacing cruelty, but still centering herself. I didn't correct her. Growth, if it was real, needed space. My mother hovered. She brought me tea, asked if I needed anything, repeated how proud she was in a tone that sounded like she was trying to rewrite history instead of confront it. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sky darken, she finally said the thing she'd been circling for days. I didn't understand your scars, she said quietly, and I think I didn't want to. I looked at her. Why? She clasped her hands together. Because if I acknowledged what you went through, I'd have to acknowledge how alone you were. That honesty surprised me. I wasn't trying to punish you, she continued. I just didn't know how to face my own failure. I breathed out slowly. Ignoring it didn't make it go away. I know, she said. I know that now. It wasn't an apology, but it was close. Meanwhile, the outside world began to change its posture toward me in subtle ways. A neighbor stopped me on my walk and said, I heard what you did. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? She flushed. I mean, my cousin was at the beach, she told me. I nodded politely. Then you heard a version. People suddenly wanted context. They wanted details. They wanted the story. I gave them none. Not because I was ashamed, but because my life wasn't public property just because it inspired awe instead of ridicule now. One afternoon, my sister knocked on my door. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands twisting together. I keep thinking about something you said, about how you never asked. I stayed silent. I don't know how to ask now, without it feeling like I'm entitled to answers. I considered her carefully. You don't ask for details. You ask how I am now. She nodded. How are you? I smiled faintly. Learning. She looked relieved, like she'd passed a test she'd been studying for days. Then she said something that surprised me. I was afraid of you. I frowned. Why?
Because you endured something I don't think I could have, she said. And instead of admiring that, I mocked it. Because if I made you smaller, I didn't have to face my own fear. There it was. I let the silence stretch, then said, You don't get to punish me for your fear. I know, she replied. I won't again. I believed her. Not completely, but enough to let the door stay open. That night, my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. I answered cautiously. Is this still Lieutenant? The voice asked. I closed my eyes. It's just me now, I said. A pause. Then, this is Morales. We served together. My chest tightened. How did you get this number? I asked.
"The Admiral passed it along," he said. "Said you might not want to hear from us, but I wanted you to know something." I leaned against the wall, bracing myself. "After you were injured," he continued, "a lot of people tried to make sense of what happened. They called you reckless, overconfident, lucky." I swallowed. "They were wrong," he said. "You weren't lucky. You were precise. You saved us because you knew exactly what you were doing." I closed my eyes, memories pressing in. Heat, alarms, the taste of smoke. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because your sister isn't the only one who underestimated you, and some of us regret staying quiet." My voice softened. "Thank you." After the call ended, I sat on the bed for a long time, staring at my hands. For years, I'd carried two versions of myself, the one who survived, and the one everyone else decided I was. The beach collapsed that divide, and now the ripples were reaching places I hadn't expected. A week later, my sister invited me out for coffee. Just us, no audience. She fidgeted with her cup before speaking. "I used to think scars were proof of weakness, like something went wrong." I looked at her. "And now?" "Now, I think they're proof that something didn't end you." I nodded. "That's closer." She hesitated. "Do they still hurt?" I answered honestly. "Sometimes, but not the way people think." She looked down. "I'm sorry I added to that." That was the closest she'd come to a real apology, and I accepted it. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I refused to let bitterness be the final mark my past left on me. The final shift came quietly. At another family gathering, a cousin made an offhand joke about someone being too sensitive. My sister corrected him before I could speak. "She's not sensitive," she said. "She's strong." The room went still. Not awkward.
Respectful. I caught my sister's eye. She nodded once. It wasn't redemption, but it was accountability, and that mattered more. That night, lying in bed, I traced the edges of my scars absent-mindedly. They hadn't changed, but the way people saw them had, and more importantly, the way I carried them had too. I didn't wake up one morning suddenly healed. There was no dramatic turning point where everything fell into place, no triumphant soundtrack playing in the background of my life. Closure didn't arrive with applause or recognition or another salute on a beach. It arrived quietly, almost unnoticed. A few weeks after everything settled, after the whispers died down and the curiosity faded, I caught myself doing something strange. I stopped covering my arms without thinking about it. Not defiantly, not to make a point. I just forgot. I noticed it one afternoon when I reached for a coffee cup at a cafe and realized my sleeves were rolled up. The barista handed me my drink without flinching, without staring, without asking. Nothing happened, and for the first time, that felt like freedom. At home, my sister hovered less. She didn't try to compensate anymore, didn't force conversations or compliments. She treated me like a person again, not a cautionary tale or a guilt project. One evening, she knocked on my door and held up an old photo. Us as kids, sunburned, laughing, before comparisons became currency, before cruelty became her shield. "I miss this," she said softly. "So do I," I replied. She sat beside me on the bed, the photo between us. "I didn't know how to be kind to you," she admitted, "because kindness would have meant admitting you were braver than me." I looked at her. "You didn't need to be brave like I was. You just needed to not hurt me." She nodded. "I know." We sat there quietly, not fixing the past, just finally letting it rest. My mother changed too. Not overnight, not perfectly, but she stopped minimizing, stopped redirecting discomfort. When people asked about me now, she didn't speak over me or soften the truth to make it palatable.
She let my story be mine. That mattered. One afternoon, as we folded laundry together, she said, "I thought protecting you meant pretending everything was fine." I folded a shirt carefully. Protecting me would have meant believing me. She nodded. I do now. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. I never saw the Admiral again. I never followed up. I didn't need to. That chapter had closed the moment he saluted me, not because of the recognition, but because someone finally named my survival without turning it into a spectacle.
I didn't want medals. I didn't want admiration. I wanted my body back, my life back. And slowly, piece by piece, I took it. The scars didn't fade. They never would. But they stopped being the loudest thing about me. They became part of a larger picture, one that included quiet mornings, unremarkable afternoons, laughter that didn't feel earned through suffering. One night, my sister asked a question that told me everything had changed. "Do you ever wish it didn't happen?" she asked. I thought about it for a long time. "I wish it hadn't hurt the way it did," I said finally, "but I don't wish myself away." She nodded. "I wouldn't survive what you did." I smiled gently. "You don't know that." She looked at me, surprised. "I didn't know either," I added. "That was the truth no one ever talks about. You don't know how strong you are until strength becomes the only option left." The beach incident faded into family lore eventually. People stopped bringing it up. New conversations replaced old ones. Life moved forward the way it always does, indifferent to revelations, hungry for the next distraction. But something fundamental had shifted. My sister never mocked my body again. Not once, not even accidentally, and I never apologized for existing in it again either. One summer afternoon, months later, we went back to the beach. Not the same one, a quieter stretch, fewer people. My sister hesitated when I took off my cover-up. Then she caught herself and looked away, respecting my space. I smiled. We walked to the shoreline together. No audience, no confrontation, just water and sun and the sound of waves. "I used to think scars were ugly," she said suddenly. "And now?" I asked. "And now I think they're honest," she replied. I nodded. Honest was good. Honest meant nothing hidden, nothing owed. As I stepped into the water, I felt the same calm I had that first day, but deeper now, settled, mine. I didn't need anyone to defend me anymore. I didn't need my pain to be validated by uniforms or titles or shocked silence. I had already survived, and survival didn't need an explanation. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's this. People will try to define you by what they can see. They'll reduce you to surface-level understanding because depth makes them uncomfortable. They'll mock what they don't understand and minimize what scares them. But your scars, whether visible or hidden, are not invitations for judgment. They are evidence. Evidence that something tried to take you down and failed. My sister learned that lesson the hard way. So did my family. But the most important part, I learned it too, and I will never forget it.